Hey everybody, this is D and Mike, and this is the first chapter tips for Rise of Tiamat for Chapter 1. I'm actually about halfway through Chapter 2, so those will be coming, but I wanted to give this some time to kind of sit and gestate a little bit and percolate in my mind before I gave you kind of a quick little list of things that you might want to try and do in your campaign. Now, this is not me going through page by page by page in the book and telling you exactly how to set these things up. Maybe there's enough videos already out there that are doing it. This is just what I've done, my ideas, and perhaps it'll give you some inspiration for what you can do in your campaign. Just to tweak things and change it up. Now, I have a list here. It's about 10 major points with a couple of bullet points underneath. And I'm just going to fire them off here in a fairly good order. But I'll do a recap at the end so you have everything. Now, let's go ahead and get into the first one, right? Just right off the bat. You need to go watch Dragon Slayer. This movie right now, if you have Amazon Prime, it actually streams for free. So that's how I watched it. I just made it afternoon, sat down, had some coffee, and watched the film. Now, this is not a fantastic Oscar-winning performance or anything. It's actually kind of a clunky movie. It's a little slow at times, but the effects are just really, really cool. The layer itself is really cool. How magic sometimes interacts with things is interesting. I love the idea of the lance and how it could chop right through metal with the long lance he uses to fight the dragon at the end. There's a lot of just cool little things I think you could pull from this film. And one of those things also being atmosphere, how to set up your layers, which I'm really focusing on right now with my first layer, which is the White Death, the layer of the White Death. So how do we make these things unique and compelling? How is one layer different from another layer? Those kinds of things. So attention to detail, I think, is important here. Now, I love the idea when he goes down into it towards the end of the movie, he'll go down into the layer itself, and there's like this water underneath with fire coming out of it. Just really nice touches like that. And of course, the whole last 30 minutes of the film is them fighting the dragon, and you can watch how that unfolds. Now, it's a clunky movie. It's got some weird dialogue. It's got some weird takes. It's got some weird characters and character choices, but it's enjoyable. It's a good watch. I think you'll get a lot of good ideas from it. So go watch Dragon Slayer. It's free on Amazon Prime. Maybe you can find it somewhere. It's going to be worth $2.99 most likely to rent it on any digital platform. And just it helps you percolate ideas for Rise of Tiamat and just how do we present these dragons. Number two is, I think, a big one, rest. I think this is really important. And what I mean is a real, true break between Hoard of the Dragon Queen and Rise of Tiamat, a break in between. Now, I know a lot of people don't like doing this. They want to go from that to the next book. They want to go from that maybe to a middle adventure of some kind. Some people bounce from that to Storm King's Thunder. Or they go from that into an Adventures League module or some kind of random homemade module. All fine and good, but let me tell you, I think rest in between the adventures where nobody's doing anything, you step away from the adventure, actually is really advantageous for your game. People get some rest from that, and they're able to kind of disconnect from the adventure for a little bit. And when they come back to the table, they'll have more stories to tell. It'll be the actual council session will be a little more entertaining, because I think players will have to sit there and really think about what happened in the previous adventure. And that'll add to the role-playing. That'll add to the whole council scene right there. Let me tell you, taking those breaks and having some patience in between these two adventures is really advantageous. I don't know how else to eloquently sell that idea to you, because a lot of people just want to keep going and not stop playing D&D. That's fine, but I really think rest is important, and it really will help your players and give you a time to just kind of chill for a moment and come up with some new stuff for the next adventure. Matter of fact, let me expand on that. I rested 6 months. Okay, you don't have to do that, but it was almost 6 months for me. And honestly, I probably could have gone a little bit longer. But take as much time as you need. 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I really recommend a month or more. All right, that's just my suggestion. A month or more, so people you can have exhale, and then bits and pieces start to kind of disappear and fade from the mind. And when you come back, it kind of puts everybody in position to where they got to really think about those chapters, really think about the decisions of what they did from the previous adventure. Right? Number 3, epilogue adventure. I think this is really important. Just like Hoard of the Dragon Queen, I suggested you do something to start off that adventure. And I think this is also a good time to do that. So you do Hoard of the Dragon Queen, take a break, then do an epilogue adventure, and then run into Rise of Tiamat. Because if you ask me, just like Hoard of the Dragon Queen, both these adventures start off awkwardly. But to give it credit, both books talk about how you can create something beforehand to segue them into the book. And I think that's a good idea. Now, how do we come up with the epilogue adventure? Again, you can find some homemade stuff that only runs a couple nights. You could pull from the Yawning Portal or something along the timelines of Tyranny of Dragons. How I did it was I asked my players in between adventures, what is your character doing? Let me know through private messages on Facebook. And everybody eventually got back to me. And from there, I created a skeleton. That was the skeleton, what they were doing in between the adventure. And I took all that and made the first epilogue adventure. And you can see that in the campaign diary number 1 on the channel. Really straightforward. As a matter of fact, it was fun. It was engaging. We played for 5 hours. I haven't done that in a long time. And it was really good. Another thing, a bullet point here, is during that time, you have the epilogue adventure, right? Ask them, because players always forget about this, if you're using this mechanic, downtime days, right? What are you doing? Remind your players about downtime days, learning new languages, picking up new skills, shopping for magical items. There's so much they could be doing. And again, it leans back into that time issue of taking a break. They'll have time to think about their characters, thumb through their players' handbooks or whatever else they got, and pick out some interesting new proficiencies, new things they're learning, and spend those downtime days in between, right? So really advantageous. I'm going to start referring to my notes here. Google Slides. Now, this depends on how you present your material. I think Google Slides is really a friend through almost any campaign. I use a 55-inch television that sits above me, and my players can look up. And I'll put a picture up here. You can see the different aspects in which I've used Google Slides. And right now, it's running strong. I'm running it through the entire adventure. It is a good way for you, through Rise of Tiamat, to display important NPCs, to display a picture of the enemy, to display an entire environment so people are always on the same page. And also, for me, kind of uniquely, it helps me with my cutscenes that I play at the table and things like that. And it is highly advantageous for the council session, right? So let's go to the next tip here, the council session. Look, there's about 627 different ways to run the council, right? Mine's number 536, okay? There's a million ways to do this, right? There are people that have done one person in charge of the entire council, even though other council members are present, and they speak for everybody. It's fine and dandy. Do it. There's other people that you fill the room with all those NPCs and go at it. For my game, I did 5 NPCs. I picked the 5 that I wanted. I didn't really follow the book, but I picked the 5 NPCs I wanted, and I had one person kind of in charge of speaking. I think it was Haven Tree. But everybody else, I had no problems, and this is not being bragging or anything. It's just how I run my games, just what I'm doing. But I had no problems with jumping from character to character to character to voice them and to argue with myself in a way and argue with characters, right? So there's a lot of ways to do this. And one of those ways is using Google Slides to have images of all your characters that are involved, all the NPCs, so players can look up to them. A quick Google search on Reddit or just in Google in general will help you kind of narrow this down too, because there was one guy I came across who made all these cards in Microsoft Word. You could cut them out, fold them, put them on your DM tent, DM screen, not tent. And on the front are all the pictures and names. On the back are all the characters' ideals. That's another way to do it. I think it really gets down to what you're comfortable with, but you don't have to do it by the book. That's the thing. I didn't care. I picked whoever I wanted and put them in the council session. And to be honest with you, I couldn't tell you what any of them really wanted, what any of their ideals were, what any of them would really be upset about in the council session, right? You just kind of go with the flow. So there are a lot of ways to do this. If you're using some kind of visual representation with television and slides, then yeah, Google Slides is going to do it because it's so easy to do. You just pick them, throw an image up, and when you're switching NPCs behind you, you could say, okay, Haven Tree, you become Haven Tree. Onothar, you become Onothar. Things like that. Another thing with the council session, do not interrogate. This is very careful, right? You don't want to be interrogating your players and being antagonistic towards them, because the council should not be vicious and just pissed off the entire time, because then the players and the characters themselves are not going to want to participate. They're not going to want to be a part of this council and really help out at all. So whatever you could do, try to avoid waterboarding your players and interrogating them. The next thing, those questions. Now, the book doesn't really have a lot of questions for you to ask, right? There's no huge long list of this is what you should say. So here's what I did, all right? I went through, this is again, is advantageous when you have that break in between for you as a DM. I went through, sat down on my desk, fired up a Microsoft Word document and said, okay, chapter 1, what happened in chapter 1? And I wrote down all the things, all these questions that the council might want to know about chapter 1. I'll put maybe a little image up here so you can see. They're kind of random, they're shooting from the hip kind of stuff, and you don't have to use any of this. But like simple things like, well, who was the enemy force? What was it comprised of? Comprised of. Did you meet anybody in charge? Like, did you get a good look on the captains, the generals who were running it? Who was in charge at Greenest? And how did the battle go? What happened to the dragon? What color dragon was it? Did it speak to you? You see what I'm saying? You can go all the way down and make a list of questions and then narrow it down to maybe 2 or 3 questions per chapter, right? That's my suggestion there. But then here's the thing. Find the sticking point. You don't have to do this because it depends on how your campaign unfolded. But find a sticking point. An example. I made all those questions, right? Chapter by chapter. My sticking point was Frulam. Frulam, who had changed sides in Horde of the Dragon Queen. That was a huge point of contention. If there's anything that maybe have upset the council and put everybody on edge, was this transition of Frulam from her high position of power in the cult to suddenly coming over to the good guy side. So I had many, many questions about that. I think I had like 8 or so questions just on that alone. So it's all contextual based. It all depends on what happened in your adventure. But you as a DM, just take a moment, think about each chapter, and write down some questions per chapter. And you don't want to drag it out. All right. If you come up with 10 questions, narrow it down to 2 or 3, and then move on. Another small thing you could do while you're doing this council session is to get up from the table. It's kind of a small thing, right? But get up from the table. I got up from the table, and first of all, it helped me think a little bit faster on my feet as I was bouncing questions and answers back and forth from player to myself or player to NPC. But also it does create a little bit of antagonizing, right? I know you don't want to go too far with this, but it does, it gives a little hint that they're kind of being interrogated, but not necessarily, right? So it can create a little bit of unease at the table if you do this. Now, I couldn't walk all the way around my table. That's kind of right over there. It's close to the wall, so I could only go like halfway back and forth. But ultimately, really, it does help you as a DM to kind of be up on your feet and moving during this time, because you may have your list of questions, but you're also responding to the answers to the players, which are going to spawn more questions and maybe even outrage from some of the other NPCs. The Drakhorn. See, this is a lot of bullet points underneath this tip. I'll leave it up to you, right? I mean, how you want to do this. Here's how I did the Drakhorn. The book says to do it before they get to the council meeting. I didn't do that. I played it kind of in the middle of the council meeting. Matter of fact, I did it at a point where everything was kind of intense and people were going back and forth, a lot of kind of arguing a little bit. And before I played the Drakhorn, I had notes prepared for what I would call my sensitive players. Elves who can pick up on things that are going on, things of that nature, magic users that are sensitivity to the different flux and movement of magic around them. They would most likely start to feel the effects of the Drakhorn. So as the council meeting went on, I would give notes out to each one of them. 10 minutes would pass. I'd give another set of notes. And these notes are getting worse and worse, like they're feeling terrible. I'll put a screenshot up. I've done this in my last campaign diary, but you could see it. But that's the thing, right? I'm building up tension. And then right when the council meeting is getting kind of heated, that's when I played the Drakhorn. Now, you're welcome to use this. I'm not going to play it here, but I have on my SoundCloud, I have a sound that I created for the Drakhorn, which fits nicely with my opening cutscene, the Song of Stones. But I played that. It's only 47 seconds, I think, or something like that. You're welcome to use it if you want to use it. Just play it at your table. But they heard that. And, of course, that really gets everybody fired up and ready to go, like, oh, my gosh, now we need to take action. It's a nice crescendo for the council session. It's also a good way almost to stop the council session, to finally get it to an apex, to realize, okay, we need to make a decision about something. And so that decision was to go after Macatha Crimson because something terrible just happened and we need to know what that was. Now, another bullet point here is you don't have to do what I did, which is I went right to the Sea of Moving Ice. You can also give them a choice if you want to, depending on how much prep time you have and if you want to really prep 2 different chapters of this book at the same time. It's up to you. I kind of want to go through all the chapters, so it didn't really matter to me. But if you want to give a choice and, they make that choice and they never experience the other pieces of the chapter, that's fine. But some people will stop at the council and give them two options. You could go here to go after Maketh, or you can go here to go after this other thing, right? And if you're the DM, you know what I'm talking about. So you could give a choice there. So that is an option instead of going right into chapter 2. Another one I think that actually kind of should go upwards into the epilogue adventure is consequences. Things have happened. I think your players should be, not the players, I'm sorry, the characters in the universe are run down. I think there should be some emotional things happening. There should be some consequences. This was a long campaign for those characters, and I think there's a lot of things that should be affecting them emotionally and spiritually and mentally, and some of them even physically from that long, drawn-out adventure. My epilogue adventure had a lot of moments where characters like Pax is a great example of going to her temples, and she's in this pool of silver liquid that's healing her, bringing her back to normal. The priests there are constantly counseling her and trying to figure out what happened and kind of piece things together. And they're concerned about her spiritual welfare. It's small touches like that, but it's those role-playing moments. So if you have a lot of players who love role-playing, it's a good way to go. It's these quieter moments that I think a lot of DMs forget about. To take time to kind of shine the spotlight. Not necessarily some big bombastic thing, but small, intimate moments, I think really could change things for you. Change things for the players and change for the characters where they're really feeling the effects of things. So next tip here, another random thing. There's a lot of exposition in the first part of the book. There's a couple pages there, 6 or 7, maybe 10 pages. Before you even get into chapter 1 to fire it off, I used a lot of that information there as rumors. So I would type up rumors in Microsoft Word and then cut them out, fold them, and I would hand out rumors at random times. And I think that's something that you could use throughout the entire adventure. That's just a random tip. Like if you just want to, maybe they'll pursue this stuff, maybe they won't, or maybe it's just, again, it's nothing but rumor. But anyway, guys, that's really about it. That is the chapter tips here. I'm gonna recap, but I didn't put it down quite in order on my paper, so I'm gonna see how this goes. But anyway, hopefully this will make sense. All right, let's recap. First, Dragon Slayer the movie. Watch it. It'll give you good ideas about dragons and just set pieces. How do we make these things? And not necessarily crazy combat, but just the feelings of dread and how a layer can affect the character as they approach it and what the desolation on the outside. 2, time. Look, work on patience here. I mean, really have a gap of time in between these two books. It doesn't have to be 5 months like it was for me, 5.5 months, though I'd recommend it. But, maybe a month or two, maybe just really some good chunk of time there so players can reflect, and you as the DM can also reflect as well on the past adventure. All right, number 3, epilogue adventure, definitely recommend it. Either grab something off the shelf that's short, or, ask your players, what are you doing in between these adventures? What would your character be doing? And from that, which is what I did, make a skeleton outline and then run with it on your adventure. Also, during that time, characters can, remind them to spend downtime days to buy magic items, to do shopping, to learn new languages or new skills, all that kind of stuff. Google Slides. Google Slides is your friend. I highly recommend it for NPCs, for any kind of visual you want to do. Also, choose your own adventure, which is what I do a lot of. It's great for that. But also to go along with the council session, which is really, really big. Okay, the council session. It's a little tricky here. I can only tell you the way I've run it, but remember, there are a lot of ways to run this thing. And again, I recommend maybe you go to Reddit or Google and kind of type that in. You're going to find a lot of people who've been trying to figure this out or have done it a million different ways. But I did it with Google Slides, having players, NPCs above me, and I would reference those characters as I became them as an NPC and just talked. Another thing with a council session is you want to break down each chapter and just come up with a list of questions per chapter. Just 3 or 4 questions is fine. You don't want to overdo it because you're going to find the council session can quickly eat up a lot of time. Also, you don't want to interrogate. You don't want to waterboard your players. This is more about just gathering information and them talking to figure out how did this story unfold. The recommendation also is to walk around the table, just to kind of think a little bit faster on your feet, and, maybe a little bit of unease there at the table. Next thing also is the finding that sticking point in the council. Find something in Horde the Dragon Queen, like I did with Fulon switching sides, that could be that moment where tension is created, and there could be some arguing back and forth because of some very strange decision making. All right, let me keep going here. The Drakhorn, you can play it at the beginning of the council if you want to. Again, I played it at a certain moment within the council session, handing out notes, building up tension, and firing off that Drakenhorn, which is on my SoundCloud if you wish to use it. But that really created some tension during the council session, and also got everybody really kind of ready to take the next step. The next tip is you can offer a choice for the next chapter. They could go to chapter 2. They could go to chapter 3. Some people have ran it this way. I have not. But it's one alternative for you. If you just want to prep, you kind of have to prep both in some respects, at least a couple pages of each. But that's another thing you could do, is give them choices as to where to go next. Another thing we could do here is consequences from Horde of the Dragon Queen. Wounds, physical wounds, mental wounds, emotional, spiritual, things that maybe have been kind of a fallout for some of these players in between adventure. It's something to explore, I think, for you as a DM. It provides role-playing moments, and it's something I think you could actually build into the epilogue adventure. And the last, I think one of the last things here, if I don't have it right, don't worry, the list will be right because I may have forgotten something, but I want to make sure that's okay, even though I'm rambling on here. But all those rumors and different things in the first portion of the book, that's all the exposition and stuff for the DM. That's a good thing you could take some information from, make some notes on as rumor, and you could pass those out, for the first 3 or 4 chapters of the adventure. Just random things, maybe if players go to a bar, if they go to, a tavern, I should say, an inn, or they're just, on a caravan or something, it's always nice to have that kind of stuff linger in the background. Another thing I didn't put on here is I use, as I always do in all my campaigns, I love using ambient effects. I highly recommend them. And I'm going to suggest this guy one more time. RPG Ambiences. You can find it on Bandcamp. He's got 4 volumes. I don't know the guy at all, so don't, it's not like he asked me to do this, but it's really, really great stuff. And several of these albums actually do have like ship interiors, ship in a storm, the docks, like there's each one 30 minutes long, and it's really good for chapter 2. There's a lot of stuff in chapter 2 that you could use these albums for like crazy. It's really, really good. So that's kind of a random tip there. So anyway, guys, that's it. Hopefully it all makes sense. Hopefully this gives you some ideas to work with. Again, Google it, Reddit, you're going to find a lot more things, but this is strictly just how I did it. All right, what's coming up next is chapter 2. I'm still in chapter 2. Hopefully I got about 2 more sessions and I'll be done with that, and then the next tips will come out. But this is, a lot of my stuff lately has been shooting from the hip, and I think this is one of those things. I've made this list for a while, but I think those are the best tips I could give you for you and your campaign that, will be beneficial for you as a DM and also for your players. All right, guys, that's it. That's all I got for you. I'll see you in the next one.